What's up, Ken?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good, dude. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Early morning.
It's good to see your face, man. I miss you guys so much, dude. I miss y'all so much.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get it personal.
Likewise.
It's mutual. It was a blessing to encounter love the way we did. I mean, I think honestly we were expecting that.
It's like
I think the blessing was in it meeting us at what our expectation level was. That was truly the gift for us, was returning and then seeing how the encounters have, affected us in our todays and our tomorrows. But yeah, we miss you as well. So I heard your voice and I had to come in just to say, Boker Tov, good morning. I love you. And I hope all is well since you returned.
It is. It's been interesting. I've been getting my ass whooped a little bit on some things, but it's good. Changes have taken place, this is what I want to talk with Carrie about today. I'm not sure what the hell's been going on, but I've just been like a whirlwind of shit has been coming and hitting me internally, and I'm just like, whoa, dude, like, oh my gosh. And I know that made no sense what I just said, but
no, totally it did. No, it absolutely. I think that we know enough that, and I'll leave you guys alone to share. Yes, absolutely. No, you made 100% sense in the realization of where we are in our current moment. And I think that the blessing is that we should be expecting this. There's a difference between being broadsided and then having it hit you in the face and the realization of what you already know. There's a huge difference, because we know that what has to be navigated correctly is the full restoration of everything. How can you go into everything in total healing still in partial standing? And so this is the heart of thankfulness and gratitude that we're able to see it for what it is and then returned in kind frequency.
Yeah.
So you make complete sense.
Good. Yeah.
I thought it was funny. It's like, we were tracking just fine, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to my mom, and I know, like, my mom's not as spiritual as we are, or whatever, and that's not a bad thing. It's just that's the way it is, with my mom, and I've dived deep in stuff where my mom hasn't, and so when I talk to her, like, I see that look on her face, like, and I feel like she's doing a courtesy and just listening to her son talk, but she doesn't really get it, or maybe she thinks I'm like off on the deep end, like, one of the things I was gonna talk to you about, Carrie, with her, and I was like I'm telling my mom, I'm like, I know you're not gonna understand what I'm saying, but for like the past 5 days, man, like, I've been having this. Some things reoccur in me, but this big thing of where and my body will freak out. My body will go into an anxiety mode where I am like aware that I am the energy within the body, that I am not the body. And I've had these things happen before, but they'll be like, oh, it'll happen, and then it might not happen again for months, and then it'll happen, it might not happen again for months. But now it's happening every single day. And like, I'm walking through the yard the other day, and I could feel the energy all around me. I could feel the energy in me. I could feel the energy leaving me when I took each step. I could feel my connection with the grass and the trees, the air and everything. And then my body instantly goes, oh God, we got to freak out. We got to reel him back in. And that's the best way I can put it. So then my mind then wants to go, what is this? What is this? What do you mean? What do you mean, this reality? And I know these things intellectually, right? Know these because of all the readings and texts and everything, and certain experiences that I've had, that I know this. But then my mind just will go wander, like, oh, and then, well, what is life? What is the purpose of this thing? What is all this? So my mind just goes, and I'm trying to reel it back in, like, all right, God, come on, man. Like, let's just get back in here. And I'm like, so basically it's like death, man. Like I'm having an encounter with death, and that's the best way I can put it. I know y'all completely will probably completely understand what I'm saying, and my body is freaking out about it.
I'm not surprised. I mean, because the ego is attached to this flesh body. It's the only place that your ego exists is in the flesh body. So by experiencing death, your ego and your mind is freaking out because it's the termination of its being.
It's literally scared to death. Mm-hmm. And we can equate that because this is what's coming in. Death is equated as Father. So we can say it that really in this place, Father is rendering clear a resolve of who he is within us, because anything on this side is darkness overshadowing. So we can say it another way, that really we're scared to encounter Father. It's usually a Father issue, because death equates as Father, but it has to be rendered clear through Mother's journey. And this is how we circumnavigate. But yeah, scared to death, scared of Father, the same word, but we're trying to find clarity in this.
Well, and the ego doesn't like the unknown. That's why Father's dark. Everything's hidden. What is it going to be like after death? What is it, the hidden, the stuff that's within us, the shadow work? It's like the ego doesn't like any of that. So you're out of body, or your expression of oneness as a consciousness, as an energy body. The ego does not know what to do with that. It, like you said, scared to death. It goes into panic mode, massive anxiety, because it doesn't know what to do with it. It's going through its death throes, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then that gets my mind, because then I'm like, my mind will go, well, cool, I've read a lot of these texts. I get, I'm not going to say everything, but almost everything of what y'all say and what y'all put out and everything like that. Like it's familiar to me, at least, in my spirit. But I'm like, my mind will go, but what do you really know? Like, you think you know all this stuff. Why? Because you read it in a book? Oh, because you listen to Carrie and Ken say some of these things, and boom, oh, you read these letters, and now you think you know. But like, I'll sit with that, and I'm like, but what do I really know? Like, I could know everything about this physical realm, and still in that, I don't know shit.
Right.
Yeah, we have to. Right. That's the whole purpose of the experience.
Well, and ego is such bound in thought that it can't go beyond that which it thinks it knows. Again, anything that's outside of known thought is a freak out for the ego. And of course it's going to convict you. Yeah. It wants you to stop pushing the boundaries.
That's why living in the heart is so powerful, because when we live in the heart, it dictates the thought. And that's what we render clear, purity, and innocence, what really needs to be translated. When we're in the heart, we have the ability to transcribe or inscribe, better put, a true reality of becoming. That's what comes out from the abundance of our mouth, is the measure of a man's heart, or a measure of a being's heart, right? So in the knowing, this is where we get our knowing from. I know, I'll speak for myself, my knowing comes from my dwelling place of my heart, and from that I pen. And then from my pen I share. But
so really then the ego becomes the servant and not the master.
That's what I'm writing right now, that the ego is rendered clear. I use ego as a propulsion device. I take its force energy and I render it clear, because really it's just ego in, not source, but ego in within us is the black side. Ego, it hasn't been rendered clear. It's been separated from the journey of Mother's white. That's the reason within Mother's white renders clear the black of ego. If we see ego correctly, we can use it as a propulsion device to navigate the white of Mother. If that's done correctly, it's called rendered clear. And now we sit as center. Ego is now in right measure, in right perspective. And you've utilized it for the purpose of through ascending, you've utilized its force correctly. But you don't want to journey back into the dark of the ego without navigating mother correctly, because that's what it does. So,
well, and you get inflated egos. You get the ego that is the master, the ego that wants to subject everyone, right? Because the ego's job is to subject you individually. And then if you go into the power of Father, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
It has to be rendered through humility, which produces meekness. Full meekness restored is ego rendered clear.
So because I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at me internally. So all these things externally, what are they saying to me internally? So like you hear the occult and David Bowie, where they talk about the black sun. To me, that's like the ego, that last song he did, I'm a dark star, that would be a person who's pretty much saying like, ego rules me. I am ruled by my ego. I have not ventured and taken that right-hand path into the light of mother, gathered light to go into the ego to render things clear. I'm totally consumed by it.
Well, and that's why that individual and other individuals will not stop after they say I am. They will say, I am David Bowie.
Yeah, I think Resolve would say I'm a neutron star. If I had to quit it as a star, I'm not a white dwarf and I'm not a black star, but I'd be a neutron, right?
Yeah, that was one thing I put. And, it's totally interesting. This isn't judgment or anything like that. But when I made that post about the I am statement that Jesus made on Facebook, that Jesus said, I noticed like Jesus never attached really anything. There's a lot of I am statements in the Bible, but Jesus himself never attached anything to that. Who do you say I am? Oh, tell them I am has need of it, and I was like, wow, I noticed he never attached anything to that. But when I see people's responses under there, I can tell they don't get it. They're not understanding what I'm saying by their response. So I can see their mental work, like where they are at in their step in their journey, which isn't bad. It's not good. It just is, based on how they responded back. And like I saw a lot of people struggle with that. But for me, that's why I post that. Like you say, like I speak from the heart. So where I'm at right now, you can tell by also my posts and what I post, what I'm wrestling with, what the Spirit is bringing to me. Because my posts are mainly for me. They're not for everyone else. I can broadsword it and I'll write it out just to generalize or whatever. But 97% of the posts I make, they're for me. They're for nobody else. But I've noticed that too, that I am where I'm coming. Like I'm not, because as soon as I put something at the end of that statement, or I am disabled. I am, and I've struggled with that. I am 100% disabled through the Veterans Administration. Well, now I've boxed myself into that I am statement, and I've cut myself off from any possibility that's outside of that statement that I just made.
Right.
Well, and technically, that would be sin, right? Separation.
Yeah, because I'm just divided.
Yeah, you're divided. I think that's why when that original phrase, Eye Esher Eye, it's like, I am a share, a happy and fortunate one, that is I am. It's like the mirror of I am. I am happy and fortunate as I am a mirror of I am.
Yeah, it declares full potentiality without limiting it through a definition. As soon as we try to define I am as a definition, we narrow its perspective of potentiality. And so that's why I am that I am is simply defines itself in totality. Anyone that would define I am with a suffixual addition is simply stating that this is my perspective of current moment, and I need to render down so I can either see myself or another as an I am potential. But in full potentiality, I am is the statement of totality, defining itself as totality, as unlimited potential.
Hence why the Aleph is added.
Right.
Because the Aleph is the totality
I
of
define
all.
myself in totality as a sum potential of unlimited potential.
I am one.
Right.
There is no division in that. There is no division. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then I've been seeing a lot clearer now why I wrote the post on manipulation, self-manipulation. You know, we get so worried about the media manipulating us, the government manipulating us, these person manipulating us. But I'm like, for where I'm at in my understanding of it, or how I see it, is like, they can only manipulate me because I'm already manipulating myself and I don't even realize it.
Yeah, you didn't read that post that Brandon did. It was so good. I'm like, yeah.
That's good awareness. That's well done.
Yeah. So like if I can render things clear within myself, which could be confusing, right? Because we read like sin is anything that divides, anything that causes division. But Yeshua made the statement, right? I did not come to bring unity, but I came to bring a sword that would divide, right? So they're like, whoa, well, wait a minute. Sin is division, but I see that within myself. Divide what? The truth and the lie. Divide what? The wheat and the tares. Within who? Within me. Not externally, because we externalize everything. So if I'm worried about being manipulated by something externally, I don't need to worry about that. That should turn me inward to know that I'm already manipulating myself. And that's like how I see this flesh and how it's been doing, right? I know that there's this greatness of oneness that exists in me and outside of me. And I'm coming into that. And then my flesh or the ego, what does it try to do? It tries to self-sabotage. It automatically goes into self-manipulation mode to manipulate me back into what is familiar.
Exactly. Because it's scared to death that you're going to find the truth, and then it will cease to be.
Yeah, it won't have control anymore.
Well, and here's the thing is that the ego, and I know you have more to add too, but I was contemplating the other day of what does it mean, because I've had a lot of people talk about death to the ego. I've had a lot of people that want to protect the ego. And I could see what they're saying. The trouble is that when we protect the ego and we go from I am Carrie, right? I am Carrie. The ego, when you identify with that, limits the ability for you to be service to the creator, because I am Carrie stands in the way. So the death to the ego is allowing the spirit of the oneness to flow through you without having the ego come in to squash it, to diminish it, because of whatever reason, wait, where did that come from? Like I've heard, and I've said this too, I don't know where that came from. That's not me. And it's like, it's false humility. It's false humility. It came from I am. Mm-hmm. I am. The trouble is that Carrie gets in the way. So I see it, if we want to have flow in our life, because I've heard that used a lot. I mean, where you're flowing in the spirit, then we need to diminish the ego, and the ego needs to no longer be present. And that's where we are dying to self. If we want to be an instrument that is completely as a clear and open channel to the spirit, this one source flowing through us, then the ego must die.
It's interesting when people say death to ego. It's redundant. It's because really what they're saying is deaths to death or ego to ego, because anything on that, I'm not talking about source potential. I'm talking about source potential within us as an individual, because ego is death if it's not defined correctly. So we can go into the dark side without rendering clear, and you will embrace death. You won't be equipped for it. You won't be ready for it, but there it is. If we journey through the righteous act of affirmation, we render clear death, invalidating death, as neutral. That is now ego fully measured correctly, and now you're knit as one again. It's the same as sin is being separated. If we can see it in the Father's measurement, sin is but an opportunity to hit the mark, yourself. That's all it is. Nothing more than an inward journey of rendering clear ego correctly, because you cannot get away from ego. Either it's going to be in impartiality, or it's going to be a measure of unrefined wholeness or a measure of refined wholeness, and somewhere of increments of between. It's an amazing thing. We are right now. It's amazing that we are going in this season that life is coming to its conclusion, and therefore we're going to see a manifestation of either rendered clear ego or a full-blown manifestation of ego in the earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's,
Improperly defined.
Right.
Immaturely defined.
Right. Which
and I've been
would be ego.
giving that a lot of thought too. You know, like we want to hate and be angry at the ego. I have, at least in times past. I don't want to say we, but I'll personalize it. I've been angry at the ego and oh well, it has to die. It's something negative. But then the spirit brought something to me the other day. If we can just entertain a narrative for a second, where like he was like, I know Adam means mankind, and the spirit was like, but what if Adam was the brain? What if Adam was your brain? And so I created Adam, the brain, but the brain could do nothing. If I just created a brain, what is it? It would just lay there on the ground and it would die without a helpmate. So then I created Eve, the body. And he was like, so if we look at the narrative, then that makes sense, especially after reading through Dr. Joe Dispenza's book about how but we think this is in control, but really our body or the subconscious mind is really what's running the show. And that shouldn't be. The body should be the servant to the master. And so I'm like, okay. So he's like, so why everything? And then I went back and I was in my mind looking at it. Well, the serpent in the garden, if we entertain the narrative, why did it come to Eve first? Well, it came to the body, and every single thing that it offered was some external thing that pleased the senses. It didn't please the consciousness. It didn't please the mind. It pleased the senses first. And then once it got the senses under control and got them reeled in, then it controlled the mind. So then the mind followed. The mind followed the body. So like the spirit was just showing it to me from a different angle of like mind and body. And why did it come to the body first? And then it made sense to everything Joe Dispenza. But the ego, if I equated the ego to the body, the five senses, the external stimuli that can take over the mind, and we've been taught and geared and driven to live towards that, it's not a bad thing if it's subservient to the master. But it's looking out for its best interest, not knowing that the mind has the best interest of the body at heart. Because it's its helpmate. This brain would not be able to function, walk, run, laugh, express, or do anything without the helpmate. It would just be gray matter floating around with nothing. You know, like, you know, I don't know if I'm coming clear in what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking that it's kind of like what you're talking about is an unquickened state prior to the heart being activated. Yeah. So it's like the physical nature of masculine and feminine energy without them being divine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Right? So if you're saying that the mind is Adam and then the body is Eve, Chava, then because for me, I see the change happening within the heart. It always will be a heart issue as far as I can see it. So until the heart gets flipped into the right order, because most of us operated in the bell heart, inside is having authority over us, aka the body and everything. Until we flip it where we have authority over our inside, then what happens is what you just said is the state of existence that we are in with the masculine and the feminine energy that haven't been quickened to really life. Mm-hmm. They're living in death, the inversion. And so when we have our heart quickened and we flip it and we actually die, because everything is an opposite in this matrix. Everything is an opposite. So when we say death, we mean life.
Right.
We're already dead. So the masculine and feminine energy without the quickening, without the dying process, then you're going to have exactly what you said. Exactly. Until the quickening happens here, and then it flips. So you go from the death to the life.
And I could see that as, you know, okay, so you have source creator, like the drawing you put on the board in Creststone. You have that singularity of source that's split into divine masculine, divine feminine, male and female, and I created them both in my image, male and female. You know, so we can become aware. And not to make an us and them thing, but you have those that are in the occult and the dark part of the things. They're aware of the mind and body. They're aware of the divine masculine and divine feminine, but they haven't connected it through the heart, through love. So the two haven't become one yet.
Right.
The two haven't become one. They're still operating. They might be doing things together, but they're not in love. They haven't been connected by the heart yet.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. The nature of subconscious is the ability that we undergo. It gives us the ability to endure. We can only really put it back together through the journey of experience. We already were it. The difficulty is undergoing the endurance program of the experience. That's subconsciously done. Consciousness is always there, but it needs to be rendered clear. Consciousness, again, is the process of rendering clear the ego. But in that body dynamic, right? This is why the whole Ouroboros of the feet and the head are such a, an intimate picture to me, because only through inculcation's walk will the head rise. Consciousness arises through the subconsciousness of the body awakening to what it really truly is. And so this language of undergoing I'm saying it purposely because subconscious means it's under consciousness. So subconscious is the undergoing of expression of journey through experience. Through the feet, the head shall rise. So we knit together as one. But again, when we see gratitude correctly, we can take ego as an experience and be thankful for what it is, because it is a propulsion device into the maturation of oneness when it's rendered correctly true. That is maturation in full standing. That's a head that stands as a magistrate that's seated on the high benchmark.
So in other words, that ego has been rendered neutralized.
You're totally neutralized, because only can adjudication come from the magistracy of neutral, right? This is rendered clear as a neutral, no longer polemic between black or white. You simply are balanced as one force again.
And I think it's because you still have the body, so you still experience everything through your senses, but now your heart has fully come online because the ego is now out of the way.
Right. It's not necessarily out of the way. It's used for what it's there for.
It's the servant and not the master is what I mean.
Remember, death equates. So yes, the ego is death. The ego is Father within us. This is why we can't see Father correctly, because most of us haven't encountered the experience of Mother correctly. When we do, and we're able to see it and have gratitude for Father within, we're able to neutralize ego and use it as a means into integrating Mother and Father as one. That's the only way we're going to do it. So ego is Father within us. And it's seeking, it will either be full-blown evil or it will be brought into, again, when I say evil, I only mean it will maintain as affliction. Until it's rendered through the wellness of the wish of the will to become gracious again. That's what we are. As graciousness. Yeah, we fell from grace, so we are a race of grace. We are a people, a race of grace. But we have to walk out that before we know what the race is about.
Now, see, this made sense to me, what you were saying, why it was different with Yeshua and his followers, and why he praised, was it Mary that anointed his feet with oil? See, the Jewish people would always anoint the head. They would always anoint the head, never the feet. And I never understood this, and it just clicked with what you said, but through the feet, the head will rise. So through the subconscious mind, consciousness will increase.
Yes.
So that's why she anointed his feet with the oils. The Pharisees around him didn't understand that. Why are you doing that, dude? We anoint the head. We don't anoint the feet first. We anoint the head.
And he said, she is anointing me for my burial, a.k.a. death.
That's right. It's like when Moshe threw down the stick. Moshe, grab the stick by the tail.
Not the head.
It's regal. Don't grab it by the head. You're not there yet. You're going to have to grab it by the tail, because it's the walk of learning that will teach the staff of authority that it is the serpent of old, and that's when the head will rise. That's when you can grasp the head. But you haven't become it yet, so grab it by the tail.
So that you can stand.
Inculcation's walk renders clear the head.
Mm. And when he raised the serpent up, he wasn't ready yet to do that. It's not a bad thing. And we say, you know, it was an idol or whatever like that, but whatever. But the point being is he wasn't ready to raise the serpent up yet and present it.
No.
And Jesus knew that the people of the time wasn't ready for that either. So they said, just as Moses raised up a serpent, they'll raise me up. Why? Because they won't understand me. They won't understand the teachings, and they will raise me up in like manner because they haven't anointed their feet.
Healing.
Exactly.
Healing is
exactly.
Healing. Absolutely.
That's the inculcative walk.
The inculcative walk is where restoration, defined as healing, comes from. The staff is a measure of healing. It's the same word for wholeness. That's why they touched it. But they were separating at that point. In the lesser narrative, there was separation because there was a sickness. But again, sickness is only defined as the flesh. Illness is the same as the flesh. The resolve is moving to the higher narrative called light. And so the staff is simply a measure to say, through the walk, you will find the headship of resolve. It means wholeness comes, healing comes. And I don't know if they saw a glimpse of where they were in their each unique individual measure. I do not know. But what I'm seeing is the measure of the staff will measure the man.
Mm. Mm. Wow, that's beautiful. I needed this. Yeah, I was telling Mom, that's what I'm working on. We were talking this morning is, you know, like I feel like I need community. I don't have anyone here. That's why I went to that church down the road. I told you, Carrie, on Sunday, and I couldn't even sit through the sermon. It's not bad. I was not trying to be judgmental or anything, but I just see it was nothing but separation. And I knew the verses that he was talking about, he really didn't have any clue as to what they were really saying. It was just, oh, this is what it says in English, so this is what it is. And then I went to the meditation little group last night. It wasn't really quite what I was expecting. Still enjoyable. But I told Mom, my mom was like, well, then just go where you feel like you need to go, you know? And I said, I will, and I want to. I said, but this is the thing, Mom, is I have to be okay in here. Because it doesn't matter where I go. It doesn't matter what. Look, I could go to China, man. I could go to freaking Timbuktu. But if I'm not cool in here, and I've rendered things clear within myself and understand, then it doesn't matter what community I get a part of. It doesn't matter what location I go to. It might be good for 3 or 4 months because there's new things to look at and explore. But I'm still going to go right back into this wrestle and this struggle and not feeling complete within myself. I said, I have to do it here. So I can't depend on some external thing. Now, do I want community? Hell yeah, I do. Do I want to be around my friends and those that are family to me? Absolutely, I do. But I know that's not going to bring the resolve that I'm looking for internally.
I was just thinking about the comment when you were saying that wherever you go, there you shall be.
Right.
Right. So
yeah, the inward walk is dependent on the exterior walk as well. I mean, inculcation's walk reveals itself as an outward manifestation. Mm-hmm. If we go inwardly, then wherever we are, there we are. We'll see it in an expression, an opportunity to mirror what is going on. So It just allows us to encounter ourselves from a reflection of a moment. And if we see always inwardly, then we can equate it as, where are we in our wholeness measure? How are we? What notch of the staff am I at in preparation of really what needs to transpire or transact, or transmute is probably the better word, because transmutation is actually defined as death. So where am I in my death walk? As we walk through life, where am I in my death walk?
Mm-hmm. And this is where I can see where a lot of the communities in the past and even maybe present aren't working, but where like the ASEANs and stuff like that could make it work is if we go into a community. If I were to go in, y'all wanted to have a community, right? We had 10 of us. So it's like, oh yeah, we want to do a community, get some land. But I came into that thinking, yes, I want to go in that community because I'll be around like-minded people and that will make me happy. That's the wrong reason for me to go into community.
Right.
Totally. But because whatever I'm bringing to that, whatever I have going on in me is going to surface within the community. It's going to come out within the community and cause discord or whatever, which is why it doesn't work, because I think a lot of people go into community thinking that will make them happy. But if I find that within myself and then join a community of like-minded individuals that have found that within themselves, then it will work. And I think like with the Essenes, that's why they could do that. They didn't depend on the person across from them, external from them, to make them happy, to complete them in some way, shape, or form. They had found completeness and wholeness within themselves, and they were able to join and make it last and work because of that.
Yeah, if I was a martial artist and I was training and I was a white belt, I'd much rather live in a house of masters and black belts than live in a collective of white belts.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, exactly. Mastery. So I was going to bring the word that malacha, I've shared this before, but it's malacha. The Essenes, aka the Qumran community, because they were one and the same. The Essenes understood the philosophy of angel morphology. And again, we get hung up on the word angel, but angel also means a messenger. It can mean a prophet, a priest, and a teacher. Mm-hmm. That's what that word means. So if we just shove it into angel, we're missing the fullness of that expression. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is malacha has the same root as the word king or queen, malak. The difference is that you have an aleph that has been added on the inside and an aleph that is added on the suffix side. So this means the reason why it's what you just described of finding everything on the inside and then coming to a group that has that same principle is that everybody within the group would have found oneness on the inside. So therefore they manifested on the outside, because that which was once hidden in the darkness through the Father is now being expressed through oneness unity. These are the priests. These are the teachers. These are the prophets. These are the malacha who have come together in oneness unity through the word that they had emptied their cup, and then they filled it with oneness unity. And what did they empty their cup of? They died to ego so they could enter into oneness unity. And so they knew this process of ascension. And that is why they were able to live in the community they did, because even the children were raised up in this way they should go. Yeah. So it was just a natural progression that everyone was taught. And so the community thrived because they were one with one another. And this is the message that was going forth with Yeshua and the earlier converts of the church, and why Rome had to come in and create the Roman Jesus and the Roman system, because everybody was to the point where they were entering into this oneness unity. They were becoming malacha. They were becoming the messengers and the teachers, and they were meeting with one another, and they didn't have the need to have a ruler over them. Because
they were governed within.
Yes.
The difficulty and to connect with even going,
which by the way is Melchizedek,
right? Because this is
the royal priesthood.
It is based on righteousness, but even going back to connect with what Carrie just said, and to connect even with on jest about if I had an opportunity and learning was my focus, and why if camaraderie would put me into compromise with many white belts, but the heart of desire would put me into the mastery's position of living in the house of many masters of black belts. And so, but with that measure, as the Qumran is that measure, it will call a standard forward. And yes. If I didn't calibrate to the standard of the mastery, then they would represent affliction to me because of their standard, and they're holding true to a measure that is of becoming to a completed being of mastery. Their standard is based off of them standing in that measure, and therefore their frequency would already emit a frequency of affliction to those that aren't calibrated to that measure.
That would be adversarial friend.
So they would be an adversarial friend for the purpose of knowing, oh, you want to live in this house. You want to live in the mastery's house of mastering. Then know that we call this tall standing order forward, and there's an expectation of accountability upon that. It's either going to draw you into the place of discipline, or it will repel you into the house of the white belt.
That's so good. That is so good.
I like that. And we got to see a little bit of that. We got to see I think a little portion of that when we were in Creststone, you know, with some of the events that happened. And it wasn't like that we were all necessarily coming together for community, but there was a standard of measure that was set. And those that didn't want to participate or that were repulsed by that standard of measure, you know, had to separate from that.
Yes. That's exactly it.
Yes.
And I find it interesting, even dot connecting, and I know you use this specifically, but I'm just talking
the white
out
and
loud.
The black belt.
The white and the black belt.
Yeah.
And so the balance of having the white and the black together is, I'm even looking at judge magistrate position.
Yes.
Right. And so I'm connecting all these dots with your visual. It's really good.
Yeah. The master of the black belt is the cloaking of the magisterial robe is over the white. And so the white garment of ascension will be robed with the black robe of completion. That's the same with Judge Magistrate. It's the same as the black belt. But again, it calls forth an order of neutrality. It says, here I am, through my measure, I am adorned in white. But make no mistake, I am wrapped as black. That's
hiddenness. That's the Holy of Holies.
That is Mother and Father. They speak from where they need to be at the given moment in clarity. From neutrality, I present a measure of teaching based upon the student's request. I will respond in kind based on that which inquires of me. That is what a master would do. He wouldn't speak the Father's hidden language. If the student was confused by that, he would bring the innocence of purity forward in the transparency of clear as a form of white if necessary, because that's what it would be. That's the progression of becoming. But again, in that tall standing, in the representation of that formation as one, standing as neutral as a master, right? He still would be an adversary and a lovely friend in its moment. There it is. And that will be drawn out by the student that inquires. And that because it's solely based on the inquiring of the master, because nonsense is still a question and it will respond in kind. It will respond as either a rebuke or bring clarity, but that'll be solely to be, the ears will hear from the student. It will hear what it needs to hear, but I'm pretty sure that the master will be very clear with what's being said in that moment. That's that amazing opportunity of expressing and sharing a space with the master, is that if we really listen, it will reveal exactly where we are.
Yeah, I love that. That was such a good example of the white and black belt. And in everything that we've been talking about, you know, you start off with the white belt. You don't start with the black belt. You don't start with any other color. You have to start out with the white belt. And there are people that want to start off as the black belt, and they don't want to go through the white belt, the steps, the processes. That was in that post I did the other day too, Carrie. You know, like I've done it in the past. I'm so guilty of it. Everything I say, I'm guilty of as well. Of making the I am when I come into this, and you know, it's become very cliche now for people to say, well, I am that I am, or I am, and I'm like, yeah, but there's a process in that. And our friend that we have on there that is disabled and he can only type with his tongue, that's on Facebook, I can't remember his name, John or something like that, but anyway, he come on there and was like, a process in becoming what? And I'm like, so I would just ask him questions, but I've seen that within me. And then I realized, oh shit, there's a process. Like the apple might be an apple in seed form, but that it hasn't brought forth that fruit yet. There is a process that apple has to go through to get from seed to ripened fruit.
Yeah, and that apple has to die first in order to release the seed so that new growth can happen.
Yeah, that's right. The biggest, I think the biggest friend of anyone in martial arts is is the fluidity of inculcation. I used to get so wearisome with like, we're doing this again. And I had, again, immaturity doesn't see fluid correctly. Immaturity sees it as redundancies that are inconvenient. A master sees the fluid of moment, fluid of inculcation as perfection, or at least the opportunity to perfect. This is where over and over and over and over again produces fluid.
I was actually just thinking as you were talking for like the last 15 minutes about the student that was teaching you that was much younger. And it was, but can you tell that story? It just, it totally popped up into my head, because this is, I think, where we really will see where we are at in the position of humility.
Yes.
Or pride. And to just connect to even Brandon, what you were saying about saying this cliche that I am without doing the work.
I'll actually share 2 stories about that, because it's very spiritually, and it stuck with me it still is with me as part of my being. Is that one
part of your instruction?
Well, absolutely, because again, we can only see what we can see in the moment, and back then I could not see, but now I'm able to see, and so I can extrapolate out a life lesson that I've already partnered with, and I can see it clearer today. And so the first one is simply this, is that my instructor and I were very good friends, and he was established in the old school way of martial arts without bastardizing it into the traditions of making it something that, wasn't from its foundation. And so we became friends, and I was at the point where, why don't you come down and join us at my place, and my wife will make you dinner, and we can just be casual. And his response was no. And yet I says, but we're friends. And he says, make no mistake, I'm a master and you are a student. If I go down and share your table and we do it on a what it does, it gives the opportunity for me to be compromised, and I compromise you if I don't maintain the status nor the stand of a master. Wow. And so he says, to honor my belt and to honor my standing, I simply am no. I will visit you in the school where I'm best suited. Other than that, I cannot meet you at your dwelling place until you meet the standard. That was the first one. And I had so much respect for him. It's like, wow, he did not want to compromise me by thinking that because we became friends that he might ease up on my training, or he might show favoritism to me, and I wasn't learning the lesson necessary of the hard inculcative walk of my feet moving so my head would rise, metaphorically speaking. Wow. The other one in the school.
Well, and then it would compromise you and how you would see him as a master. Because then you, in your immature state, could say we're equals.
Or I put expectation upon him based on a friendship that no one knew, and then I become what? The special student, or I have favor that no, it's all about equal. It's all
honor.
Right. And so I was so respected him for that, and because he was all about honor. And this is where I encountered the other story that Carrie was bringing up about a young boy. He was about 15 years old, and I'm not going to mention the name purposely, but the instructor would then, because there was enough people in the room, that the black belt's role was to then fulfill what was to be furthered for them, and that was the teaching qualities. When you become a black belt, now you're qualified to teach, right? Now we're talking.
So in the language, that would be a lamed.
That would be a lamed.
That would be the letter lamed.
You have now fully encompassed yourself through the journey of white to equate as the adornment of black. This is now a robe of righteousness in the Melchizedek language, or a robe of self-adjudication, has granted you the ability to teach now from this place.
Having the staff of authority.
So this young boy of 15 was given to me to teach. And now I'm at that point, I'm 6'2", and I'm probably at that point, I don't know what I was, doesn't really matter what belt I was, but
you weren't a black.
I wasn't black.
No.
And this 15-year-old was half my height, and he was coming up correcting my form. Now, I'm at that point, I think I was like 26 or so, right around that age. And he's correcting, moving my hands to best suit from where he knows, he's moving, gesturing me to best suit me. And I was so impressed I'm going like, and I remember looking at him, and because when they come up and they share with you, the discipline is that you bow in reverence.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bow to the acknowledgement of the master coming to tweak your form so you would become the representation of intention. In that, there's a mutual respect of bowing to the teacher when they come and then when they leave. And so the separation of age really threw me, but it was such a heartwarming to me that I just thought like, oh my goodness, little man, you're directing this ship, right? And I'm going like, what a powerful lesson I learned. And I was so thankful for him. He was so gentle. He was so kind. He was so mature at 15, and he was stewarding his authority so well. I had no choice to bow in reverence to him.
Can you share one more story? The black belt that came in with the badges.
Oh.
So this I felt like, please, if you can just humor Ken for one more story, because it's the opposite of what
this is the opposite.
A humble black belt portrays, one who is meek versus one who is walking in self and pride. So this is two sides to see how this can operate.
So this was this was after I'd already gone through my own processing of my own belt progression. And I was there. My son wanted to go into it, so I went to another studio, really good studio as well. I know the instructor was very well disciplined himself, and that's why I went in there. And he said, Ken, he says, you're allowed to wear your belt of completion if you choose. And but I didn't have my gi and I didn't have my stuff. And I said, no. I says, I'm fine wearing the white. And he said, very well. He says, that's your choice, but he says, you can wear your belt of representation here. He says, you're acknowledged, and we recognize that. And so I said, no, I'm here for another reason. I'm just here to support my son. I says, I don't need anything other than that. And so we were doing our class, and then a visitor came that from the Portland area, and he came in his black attire, and he was fully seasoned. You could tell because he had regalia up his arms about stripes, about how many years, and this is and that, and badges of conquering and conquest, and I was like, whoa! And he was about 6'7", and huge guy, and he took his position at the front because a black belt that wears the colors doesn't have to stand with the class; he can stand at the front of the class, and so he stood beside Mr. Witt as Mr. Witt was giving the instructions, and then he says, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do some takedowns, and he says, Ken, this is your partner. And I said, very well. And so
I'm sorry, I already know the story, so it's funny.
So he comes up in his full colors and regalia, and I'm just wearing my whites, and he looks at me, and we bow in recognition, and we go into fighting stance, and then we're told commence, and I leapt on him. I did what I did based on my training of what my belt within is, my coloring within. I simply did what I did, and I took him down in a way that he surprised him.
Show what you did.
Well, I leapt on him on a way that it's called a neck choke, but I leapt on him face to face, and I put all my body weight on him, and my hands reach around his gi, and it's just a neck choke. So I just reach around, and I just close my hands, and I throw all my weight backwards, and he had to support my weight, otherwise we'd fall. So he actually lowered my fall to the floor, and on his hands and knees while I'm underneath him, and he tapped me, said, I'm out. So he was a very quick move. I think it was within 3 seconds he was tapped. But the thing was, he didn't realize that he came in his full authority, not knowing that the innocent of white still has power and authority. So he recognized me for what he could not see. He simply recognized me for face value. And that's exactly why Dan put us together, because I'm sure that Dan was going, this is going to be really interesting. So it was a measure. He met me with a force of more ego and pride, and I simply responded by simply what was already in me to say, well, you may not see my color, but here it is, and I'm going to demonstrate it by action.
Right. Wow. So to me, that's a great story that would kind of embody why Yeshua, who came with great power and authority, always humbled himself and sat with what they would call sinners. The outcasts. The Pharisees would be that other guy that had all the stripes and gear and everything, but who's like, no, I can't sit with those people. Why would you sit with the sinners?
Yeah, he would have done it exactly. He would have done it through the action. He's fully committed within. He was wholehearted within, and so wherever he goes, he was the frequency activated. He didn't need any outward adornment at all. Only ego needs to be recognized in outward adornment,
and only ego needs to be set apart and set above.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. I love that. I love that.
A lot to be learned from these life experiences that we have, and it's still my favorite story. It makes me laugh just because I can see it in my mind's eye playing out, and how much that visitor learned that day.
Yeah, well, his response is like, well, obviously you know something.
Yeah.
But because
obviously,
but again, the power is in the humility, regardless of what is respect is respect.
Mm-hmm.
That there should have been something that, again, I would expect a setup that Dan would have said, "Hey, go easy on him." But again, it was a lesson for both of us to realize what dominates is respect.
Right. Wow.
It's a neutral ground. Neutrality is a neutral ground of respect, and that's where we can look at one another and bow to one another. But we activate.
You know what is so amazing? I just was thinking on that. That could have been pride and fear, but because you were in a place of neutrality, you didn't allow fear to intimidate you because of his stance of pride. You just simply did in the place of neutrality, hence why your belt was the way that it was.
Yeah, well, I had
right, because there was no distinguishing.
Yeah.
And so in that place of neutrality, there was not the fear there that could have caused the outcome to be completely different.
Well, in all honesty, what I was even thinking was my invisibility was actually my best friend.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
That's really good, Ken. I guess that's what I was saying. The invisibility and neutrality is the same thing.
I just put it another way.
I know, I love that.
That's the invalidation of Father. If you have it within you, there's no need of adornment of validation. That's why Father as death is called invalidation, because you've rendered clear through validation. There's no need for an outward garment because you are the garment fully invalidated as neutral.
Mm-hmm.
The conspicuousness or the inconspicuousness of validation renders clear as the invalidation of conspicuous. It's a complete mirror of one another. But there's no need for anything other than for your moment to be your moment. That is it. And so invisibility, transparency, inconspicuousness is Father within us. No need for any garment. There'll be nothing other than a cloak of representation based in this realm that's coming. The judge magistrates are simply going to be a representation of healed and whole as a whole summation. Whatever that looks like, it will be perfect in its representation.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. And the recognition, when you were talking about that he recognized, that was like, to me, just brought up with the narrative, when like Yeshua was walking out through in the Samaritan, right? And like he had been through Israel and seen the Pharisees and everything else. But Jesus, he looked at him and he was like, dude, no greater faith have I seen than this guy right here. Like, this is the example. This is a dude that wasn't even included in anything that y'all have, wasn't even allowed, but yet he knew. And I know it's like opposite, because that dude, he did recognize, but he came in through that real staunch stance and showboating, so to speak, through his stripes and everything like that. And we had the same thing in the military, and I never understood this really until just now. I never examined it because it never made sense to me. But, lower enlisted and higher enlisted was never supposed to intermingle. You were never supposed to hang out outside of work or anything like that. And I was like, oh, that's stupid. You know, like I was always friends with my sergeants, but now I understand why, because me as a lower enlisted, and or once I became a higher enlisted, if I hung out with my lower enlisted soldiers, no longer would they respect my authority, would they honor my position or anything like that in there, because now in their minds, well, we're buddy, we hang out, we drink together, we barbecue together, you know, we go to clubs together, we do all of this. So then that would reflect back into the workspace, and it was just no honor in that. And I know that's a worldly kind of example, and
it's
the same.
It's excellent. No. Actually, it's the description of what holiness is versus common.
When we see the template of completion as chieftain in general, the same word in Hebrew, if we compromise the template anyway along the line, then the chieftain and the general is compromising completion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they would know that as a system, because there's not probably a greater system of representation of a military mind, because it seeks it's so well oiled that it knows that it has its intention is solely based off its influence, and if there's compromise along the way, then the intention is compromised. The outcome, the purpose it renders it as void. Like, what's the you've now have a force, like their line of completion is so detailed in how it becomes a mandated potential as a general, that it must perform the duty of its restraints.
And the example you gave of your master and everything, it's like, to me, what brings up too is there's this transition within the scriptures and the English narrative where they were calling Yeshua Lord, you know, and that's fine and dandy, right? Just as you would show honor and respect to your master, you know, black belt, the teacher, and you would call him, you know, whatever you called him in martial arts. I don't know what you call him in martial arts, teacher or master or whatever, I don't know. But then Yeshua, before he ascended out, said, but now I call you brother. So we've gotten hung up as a collective within Westernized Christianity of just seeing Yeshua as a Lord, as our teacher, never knowing I'm not asking you to stay the student. I am asking you to become my brother. I am asking you to come up and become a master as well.
That's where the same word is, that the instructor, first of all, I called him sir, but make no mistake, sir was affliction to me. He caused much pain and suffering. So a friend, this is where we have an adversary versus a friend. When you equate to the measure of friend, he calls you friend. But until then, I call you adversary. Because you are the affliction, but your affliction has got an intention, and your intention is based on an influence of infliction. When I go through affliction correctly, and I come to the resolve of intention, I am called friend.
Wow. And to me, a good example of that would be one moment, right? You have, and I did a post on this recently. One moment you have Peter. Jesus, you know, is telling him, look, I got to go into Israel, man, and I'm going to say a few things, and they're not going to like it, and they're going to kill me. And he's like, no, howbeit, that'll never happen. And he's like, whoa, get behind me, Satan. So he's like, you're the adversary right now, dude. You're not understanding it. But then later on, Yeshua says, okay, dude, on you, Peter, on you, this rock, I will build the church, and to you I give the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Now he's risen from that adversary point of view to now a fellow master teacher, a brother, you know.
Yeah, he was wielding the sword of Father without really properly ascending into the position. You can't take the role of adversary, right, until you go through the way of the student. He was administering the place of mastery without maturing through the student's position.
So in other words, he was coming to the place of still being poor and destitute.
Right.
In his ego flesh,
and he was
trying to control another,
right,
versus being in that area where he's risen above, can see where one is already at to help raise them up instead of trying to control them.
He says, you're wielding your sword immaturely, and you have not progressed to the place of maturity to know what you say.
Exactly.
But you're wielding maturity incorrectly. I'll be clear with that. So get behind and follow until you learn how to wield the sword as a master, because that is maturity.
And
You
at
would
that
not,
point,
you by opening your mouth and saying that already tells me that you are immature in your standing. Get behind me.
Which is all of us, right? We're all like Romans chapter 8, verse 7, you know, a mind set on the flesh, Colossians 1:21. Although at one time you were alienated and separate and hostile in mind. So at one time we all were, just as Peter was. We were all, get behind me, Satan. You are the adversary because you have not gone through the light to completely understand the dark, to have the staff of authority, to know how to wield that sword that you're using. You don't know. Get behind me. We all have been that.
we're still all doing that. As soon as the
Yeah.
ego raises its head, you're doing it.
Yeah, the power is actually in not unsheathing the sword.
Wow.
The power is simply being it. As soon as we draw it out, then we're already diminished, really, the potential of neutrality.
Right, exactly. As soon as that sword is raised, you are now in conflict.
That's what Father already knows in the language. Is going, you're going to have the power to wield the sword, son. But remember, all power lies in not unsheathing it.
Wow.
That is when you're fully centered.
The ego is the only thing that wants to defend itself.
And there's this certain culture, I can't remember which one it is, whether it's Chinese or Japanese or whatever, I don't know, but where they will not even to show you their sword or their dagger or whatever, but they will not unsheath it. And the only time they are going to unsheath it is if it's to draw blood, you know, they not even to show you what it's like. So for me, that's like, if I pull my sword out, it is going to cut. It is either going to prune or it will slaughter, one or the other. What is it doing? Am I pulling it out to prune, to help the person in understanding, or am I pulling it out to try to cut them down, to slaughter them? You know, that's just how I see that in my mind right now.
Will you just explain the letter Zayin?
Yep.
It's either a sword or it's a plow.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is pertaining to issues of the heart.
Yeah. If a master has the ability, if the master is given, and the sword's only given because that's where he's already beat the plowshare into a sword.
Mm-hmm.
This is the work of inculcation. That's the measure.
Because he took his sword and beat it into the plowshare.
It's a circle. We're saying the same. We've been saying it, that's where the white belt, the master of the black belt, teaches as the white belt when he's needed to teach as the white belt. But again, unless you're in competition, two black belts would meet face to face with the utmost respect, but neither one of them would throw a punch. Right. Because they know the potential of the knowing is really based on the honor of what you know is not to bring harm.
In other words, two sovereigns who have gone the way of mother and father.
It's like I think I shared before, is that when you come across an immature sovereign at battle because his 10,000 man army is standing behind him. But a mature sovereign comes alone, but make no mistake, camped behind the mountain range is a 10 million man army. And he can call on it on a whim, but he chooses not to. They're sitting around the fire joyously cooking in one another as family. And if he whistles, they will be there. But he comes solely by the knowing, in the peace of his knowing, because the left-hand path of Father is fully encompassed as peace. Here I am as peace, but make no mistake, I can call legion upon a legion. They're just encamped on the other side, and they are with me and for me.
Wow.
But I do not bring
That's the Elijah, the other army came presented.
Open their eyes and show him what he cannot see, for what is for us is greater than what comes upon us. Right.
And then that's when you are talking about the plowshare, because I was like, well, doesn't the scripture say first that we're to take our swords and beat them in the plows? And then later he says, all right, now take your plow, beat it back into a sword. Is we all come in here, we all come into this realm, and we all have a sword. We all do.
That's called immaturity, or it's called ego. Pound your ego into a teaching.
Right.
And the immature is always seeking to go to battle to justify itself.
Put away your sword. Put away your sword and turn it into a plowshare so you can plant, to reap, to harvest, to grow, so you would know what your sword really is.
Right. Wow. Man, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, we do that. That's what I've done so many times and can still do to sometimes is take my little sword out and try to wield it and don't understand. I haven't gone through and got the thorns and thistles completely out yet and cultivated the land within me. And yeah, wow.
Well, we know that as soon as we get into a defensive posture, we got out of our heart and went into our head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, swordplay is nothing to mess around with. You know, the danger of wielding a sword immaturely is you usually end up cutting yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. That was awesome, Ken. Yeah, I felt that one.
That's completely true. It is. Whoa, dude.
I know.
That's good stuff this morning.
Actually, it's like the great way to start out the day. I'm actually glad that Ken came in and sat in with us.
Me too. That and I miss Ken's face. I see your face a lot more than I see his, but
I know.
Well, it's such a, you know, and I don't.
He's working behind the scenes. I have to go here soon. I'm supposed to meet with Candor right now, but I asked her to give me 15.
Actually, I'm thinking about you when I'm writing this right now. So I thank you so much for your kind words about saying I see you, and that truly blessed my heart. There's a new level of well within me for you. You need to know that I can just even saying that I can feel tears in my eyes because of your genuineness and your organicness to want to be. I just find that incredibly beautiful, and to see you as a brother and a friend, you know, face to face, truly blessed me beyond belief. It really just, it caught me kind of. It was unexpected, really, to see the measure of who you are as a being, and it really opened my heart just to see. It's been so long since I've gotten out that it's like, wow, this is truly beautiful, and. So I'm writing these things right now that are coming through as death that we're talking about. Then I'm hoping that I know sometimes the stuff sounds coded. It's not meant to be coded, and it's simply coming through spirit extraction. And so just know that what's about to be released, especially in this next day or so, is specifically pointed towards you in gentleness and kindness to try to assist, because of there is so much potential. There's potential in all of us. But, you know, I just see so much within you that, I mean, I can only see what I see, and I don't know if you know what I see. That's part of my gifting, is I see so much potential that it blesses me. So just know that when I release things, it's specifically for loved ones like yourself.
Well, I appreciate that, and it is a big honor. You know, I look at you as more than a friend, as family, both of you guys, but specifically with you, Ken, you know, it was like, wow, you know, I didn't know what to expect when meeting you. I didn't like have an expectation, but whatever expectation could have put on that, it was more, and it was bigger, and it was better than that. And
wow, thank you.
I just, whew, man, like, I love you guys, dude. This has been a very, 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 very hard and difficult journey for me. Very difficult. And to meet two people that just have the heart that y'all have and the gentleness that you have and everything, and like it really means a lot.
Thank you, Brandon. I feel very much the same way about you. So I'm blessed beyond measure that we've met, and I love getting chances to talk to you.
And I just want to say that the beauty of what you just said is that, I know Carrie needs to go, but the beauty in what you just said is that we get weary sometimes of, you know, I'll speak for myself. I get weary based on, I guess, being misunderstood or not fully comprehended. And that's my own issue. But the encounter, what it did for me is it just stirred hope in me again, just to see lovely present itself. And so it really touched me to say, wow, it gave me a fresh wind to say we are being comprehended, and family is gathering right now. And so for that, you know, what you just said was beautiful. And I just say Todah Rabbah, thank you very much for your kind words.
Yeah. Todah Rabbah to y'all, man. Thank y'all so much.
Love you, Brandon.
Well, I love you guys too, man. Enjoy. Have a good rest of your day. Me and Mom are gonna go fishing.
Good. Go enjoy, and I'll go plan on chatting with you on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Shalom,
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 shalom.
my friend.
Shalom, shalom. Namaste.
Namaste.